Hello and welcome to Above the Fourth Panel, where bad webcomics burn. Today we're going to review an old webcomic, and before we do this, I think we're going to need to lay down some more context than usual before getting into it. In the early 2000s, the internet was a very different place. It wasn't as heavily centralized as it is today, where we can expect to log into Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube and just have access to everything immediately. Communities were smaller, and because there was less of a spotlight on them and people spending frequent time online were smaller in number in general, the tone was pretty different overall. There was a bit more of a whimsical tone to everything, despite the copious amounts of edge. There was hyper-violence and incredibly dark humor everywhere, but most of it didn't have an ill intent, nor was it read that way. People were more desensitized and less sensitive. And when you consider that we just come out of the 90s and into a decade overshadowed by a major tragedy, about to start a war that'd last us the better part of it, the tone was all over the place, and most of that hasn't really aged all that well. Video hosting wasn't a major thing in those days, and although we were rapidly moving towards file sharing services with video, you could expect downloads of both music to take hours and videos days. Inspired by the increased availability of image hosting, the rise of art communities, and that constant feeling of seeing newspaper comic strips and going, I can do better than that, every kid in art school, and every kid that wanted to be in art school, and everyone who knew how to rip sprites or find sprites to rip, made their own terrible webcomic. From gamer comics about gamers sitting on a couch complaining about video games, to sprite comics about characters in a video game talking about meta humor inside the video game, to anime fans moving to Japan to be closer to video games. As long as you wanted to make a comic about video games, you were going to find an audience. Now it's easy to riff on Ctrl-Alt-Delete and the sense of loss that it invoked when it suddenly evaporated into memetic status, or tear apart Penny Arcade because it's probably the most famous one, and it would probably make more sense to tackle the fall and plummet of Mega Tokyo, but instead we're going to review Dominic Deegan, a webcomic that grew to moderate success in all its edgy glory. Dominic Deegan started in May of 2002, ending in May 2013, written and drawn by Michael Mookie Terraciano, I'm probably saying that wrong, as a way to continue using his Dungeons & Dragons character after being kicked out of the session he was playing with his friends. Clearly he took a liking to the webcomic format, since after starting it up he consistently uploaded every day, almost never missing a single upload. The art, while bad, honestly resembles a lot of the art I've seen from artists in those days, many of whom also wanted to start their own webcomic. If I'd have to compare it to anything I've personally followed in those days, I'd have to go with Mega Tokyo, although Mega Tokyo feels more like a rough draft of the comic than Dominic Deegan ever does. Back in those days, just being able to show up and work on your thing was often considered enough, no matter how limited your scope was. The internet was smaller, so with less people there, you'd also have less people hosting their own works, and less people consistently uploading on a schedule. So if you were delivering consistently on a schedule, you were ahead of almost everyone online. This still holds true today, at least percentage-wise, but in pure numbers, there's also way more people here in general, so competition is going to be a lot tougher now than it used to be. Plus, instead of people sharing your work, we've got algorithms doing it for us now. The first chapter of Dominic Deegan starts us off with the introduction of Dominic Deegan, a seer who hates his job because people suck, constantly putting down customers with snark while occasionally throwing in the odd pun. We're also introduced to his cat, Spark, who doesn't have a personality yet. Siggy, the guy who is an asshole and beats him up immediately for not liking what he hears, who almost instantly became one of the most popular characters in the comic. Not kidding. And Bumper and Stunt, who don't get named until chapter 2. You know those 90s anime that were 26 episodes long and started with about 4 to 6 episodes of filler before introducing the main story? That's what chapter 1 is. The first real arc of sorts. After insulting a customer, Lady Travoria, she places a curse on him. Every time he smokes his pipe, fish fall out of the sky. After capturing Bumper and Stunt, he coerces them into doing his dirty work, finding a cure for the curse at her mansion. Shortly after, he sees a vision that something bad is going to happen, so he also sets out to help them help him. While at the mansion, Bumper and Stunt run into Siegfried, who is at the Travoria mansion as a guest acting as a general guard, part of his nightly duties. Dominic arrives just in time to take the blame for them, only to barely escape punishment as Lady Travoria herself reveals her evil plan and is shortly after put to death, which is the start of two of the major things Dominic Deegan is infamous for: tone-deaf, edgy art, like the decapitation of Lady Travoria, and the gross relationship between Deega and Luna. I've glossed over the most important story element just now, so we can give it its own breathing room. The entire arc is an excuse plot to get Luna into the story and excuse her personality. Lady Travoria's big scheme involved breaking her daughter's self-esteem to the point of committing suicide while a royal knight is present. If someone in her family dies with a knight present, the kingdom is supposed to pay out heavy compensation for failing to perform their duties. So for a full year, she made Luna believe she's worthless and ugly, expecting her will to live to come to an end when she meets Siegfried and he turns her down. After everything is settled and done, we find out that Luna was left out of the will, causing her to kill herself. Deegan takes Luna into his home, and the entire chapter plays out like that awkward scene between Naomi and Otacon in Metal Gear Solid 4, except they don't fuck. It's really awkward. From Chapter 3 onwards, Dominic Deegan starts having a relationship with Luna. It's creepy and awkward in a way that's hard to describe unless you've read it. A lot of Dominic's interactions with his customers read like someone working in retail or food service while trying to find a place to vent. One particular strip in Chapter 6 is something I've experienced on a near weekly basis while working at a Japanese restaurant many years ago. It really hammers home that Deegan is a self-insert for the writer to live out his fantasies with. It's why he gets to be smug and superior to everyone around him, and why he can read the future. He's writing the story, so he knows what's going to happen. The introduction of Luna to the format is what brings the self-inserting to a point that can legitimately be hard to read at times. Luna is a waifu. She has her tusks that everyone thinks are ugly and are the main reason everyone thinks she's horrible, but in the art, it doesn't really stand out as particularly bad. It's like that mark the girl in the Ready Player One movie has, something that allows her to be hot while having low self-esteem. Treated as garbage by the evil regular people, only allowing the main character to see them for what they truly are by the virtue of them being that great a person. Except, Luna constantly wallows in self-pity. She's constantly crying and needs Dominic to comfort her. Despite all the care, attention, and love she gets, she continues to feel unloved and unwanted, resulting in tons and tons of strips that are just Dominic holding her, comforting her, and generally being around her. It almost feels like Mookie himself was in love with Luna, or at least the concept of her, at the time of writing, and it's off-putting to read because of that. Speaking of everyone needing Dominic's help, Dominic starts having visions of his brother, and he needs his help. He's trying to help the Dryad Tree, which had its roots cut by an evil sorcerer and his axe-wielding henchman. Also, Bumper and Stunter there, because we need more characters here for some reason. This introduced our first real villain, the Infernomancer, an evil man who likes to kill people. That's all there is to his character. He has wounds that never close, and he likes to murder. This is where the violence really gets gratuitous. Despite having his throat cut open, the Infernomancer is completely fine. Shortly after getting up again, he falls for a trap that Dominic sets for him. He pretended to be his crippled brother, Gregory, so he can get stabbed to death while Gregory banishes him with powerful white magic. This also conveniently has Dominic in the full blast radius, keeping him alive since white magic heals. It's a solution that renders just about every earlier panel obsolete, but that's something you're going to have to get used to in Dominic Deegan. Oh yeah, that Dryad thing, it resolves itself away from all of this. Gregory loves couch forts, and Luna cries a lot. That's it. That's the chapter. Gregory is kind of a non-character. He's childish, naive. He also falls in love with almost every girl he sees instantly, except of course Luna, who is ugly and repulsive and worthless. He's someone who gets story beats attached to him rather than really develop from them as a person for the most part. When Luna and Gregory go shopping, the villagers attack them for being crippled and ugly. Yes, really. They pretend to retaliate, scaring off the villagers. Shopping goes well, they get slutty outfits, and it's revealed why Gregory is crippled. An attack during a zombie outbreak has given him the blight of the undead, which he balances out with his white magic, constantly healing himself with his powers, like Cable. The zombie attack caused their third brother, Jacob, to become a necromancer himself. The villagers they scared off early last chapter are back and they are pissed. Dominic then scares them off with even more illusions. Now this is where things get heavy. The villagers call in help from a knight to put a stop to the terrorizing acts of the Deegans. As Dominic starts to get troubled by visions of his evil brother, Siegfried comes in to take him down like the evil tyrant he is, reducing everyone to a bloody pulp over a simple miscommunication. This is the start of Mookie trying to make Siegfried look like an irredeemable piece of human garbage, something he'll double down on even more later on. After a pointless conflict where everyone is beaten to a bloody pulp and then healed, they talk about Dominic's brother possibly returning as he's had visions of him. After that, we can go back to Luna being sad and Dominic hating his job, though upon realizing he's no longer wanted in town, he gets really happy and decides to move out after he's finished up on some business. Going out, he meets with the same people from the pointless conflict to have another pointless conflict where he tells them they'll die if they go to Barthus, so they go to Barthus anyway, rendering this meetup trivial, while Deegan and crew head to Deja, a slime monster, to get Deja's view. After meeting Deja, they head to Barthus, where Deegan almost instantly recognizes the bartender/innkeeper from his visions of the future mass murder about to happen in town. Of course, Siegfried shows up here too, and he shares a room with one of the cult members, Vilrath, the evil seer, and upon hearing any excuse to kill his roommate, he jumps the chance. This of course has him comically give away the plan by screaming for murder loudly, which hilariously ends with him being crucified. While all these shenanigans are happening, an imp placed command runes on the possessions of everyone staying at the inn. This sends everyone into a depressive state, causing them to want to kill themselves. No, really, they're all magicked to want to kill themselves by hanging themselves from the same tree. If this didn't seem pointless enough, Deegan's big plan is to confront the enemy by pretending to stand in front of everyone so he could stand behind them instead and cast a spell to lock them in place. This effectively does nothing as he's immediately hung after casting his big release spell that he could have cast at any time before confronting them. But then it turns out it was all a ruse. The evil seer Vilrath was actually dead all along. He was actually Jacob, Deegan's evil brother, all along, wearing his skin like a cheap costume. Jacob then proceeds to violently and bloody murder everyone, getting everyone's blood all over Deegan, even ripping the skin of his own arm and throwing it at him. Jacob wanted to lure everyone here to pull the blighted blood from Gregory's leg, so the entire massacre served no purpose. Gregory then gets a Zenkai boost and goes Super Saiyan because Mila, a girl there, kissed him. The power of Horny Unmained saves him, and everyone else. They then let Jacob go so he can be a villain later on again. And almost everyone is fully healed again because of Jacob's healing powers used as an attack, just like earlier into the comic. By this time, the overall tone of the later work is set. Dominic Deegan is a very edgy and dark webcomic, often for no reason at all. Characters have their throats slit, get blown up, women get decapitated and have their heads frozen in Ahegao face long before anyone knew what this was. And it somehow still has this almost naive and whimsical tone to it while it does that, because that's kind of what the internet generally was like at the time. Going over an interview Mookie had a few years ago, apparently an art teacher told him to explore dark concepts that were pushing it, to make his art move forward. Obviously, his teacher wanted him to explore his internal problems and draw them out through his writing and art, something that generally defines a lot of artists as they become more familiar with themselves and where they draw inspiration from. Mookie likely instead took this at face value and decided it means that he had to make everything as shocking as he possibly could, with empty sex and violence at every turn. And when someone is heavily desensitized like they were on the early internet, especially then, and is likely too young and too into power fantasy media to empathize or emotionally invest in basic humanity in fiction, this is kind of the result that you get. Chapter 9. Luna is sad and she cries a lot. Jacob is in love and is considering becoming a holy knight. After being heralded as heroes, Deegan immediately starts hating the new villagers. Gregory decides he's too horny to be a knight, so he stays with the healer girl. We get a few more weird moments where Dominic and Lugan get romantic, and it really feels like someone writing about their self-insert and their waifu together. Now, before we continue, there's a couple of things that we should address. The next chapter is really big and messed up anyway, and it might be a good idea to have a breather for a moment. There's a couple of things that I've been wanting to say, but I couldn't find the right time for it, so here goes. Dominic Deegan as a webcomic is not as bad as people often make it out to be. Sure, it's bad. It's very bad, in fact. But there's a couple of weird things that could have very easily made it a lot better, some of which gets addressed the longer it goes on, some of it doesn't. But this is all stuff that we should be aware of as we basically enter Dominic Deegan at what could be considered the peak, because there is a downfall, and we're not covering that in this video. If you want to see the downfall of Deegan, where even a lot of the fans at the time trailed off, you might want to go read it for yourself. You might not like it, but this is what Dominic Deegan at peak performance looks like. The biggest problem that the webcomic has could easily be addressed in the format. Everything keeps being resolved with big shonen anime power battles and just doesn't lend itself to a 4-panel strip format at all. You can't convey big special attacks or big brain strategies with just 4 panels, so the fights keep falling flat. The belief everything should be a funny news strip and end with a joke certainly doesn't help with that either, and it tears down something that feels like a very genuine attempt at world building and at times character development. Besides that, there's the plagiarism. Bumper and Stunt during different times within the comic's lifespan represent Sorceress, Stabber, Orphan. One in design, the other in what his mission in life slowly becomes. Though there is a third Orphan in Deegan. I'm not sure about the anime's writing or delivery, but in the PlayStation 2 launch title, he's voiced by Quinton Flynn in the most Quinton Flynn he could possibly be.
Oh, looks like you've got the hots for her.
What? Of course not! How can you say that? This is no time to be kidding around.
Whatever. She's going to need more protection than you can provide, so you two, come with me.
All right!
The way he talks and interacts with people, that's the voice Dominic Deegan is written in. Although the copied characters don't end there. Siegfried is Gaudi from Slayers. Oh, and that person next to Gaudi, what's her name? Lena Inverse? Nah, that can't be right. That's Deegan's mother. But what about Jacob? Byakuya Kuchiki who? That's just Jacob Deegan. And what about Dominic? Well, I hope you're not a fan of Valkyrie Profile, because if you are, you're going to get pretty upset right now. The first really big fight in Deegan, well, Naruto was just starting to get popular, so it probably felt like a good idea to include the water prison bit as a joke in there. Oh, and Trevoria Castle? I mean, that's clearly Castlevania. Although, now that we've had some lighthearted fun, let's go back to the big last chapter we're going to cover in this video. Chapter 10 brings back the Infernomancer and introduces us to the evil leader Karnak. Almost immediately into the chapter, a centaur spider girl is decapitated and frozen into an Ahegao face. Karnak then proves his superiority by eating a dead Ahegao-faced girl's body in front of the Infernomancer before striking a deal with him to kill certain people. Deegan gets a vision of Luna's sister being in danger in a sex-filled city, so they head out to save her before being attacked by Stunt and Bumper who stab him, which ends exactly the way it did last time, with Luna doing about the same thing to them again. When they find Luna's sister, she's having sex and she's enjoying being seen, and ups it to a threesome for them to enjoy. When they arrive at the mansion that she lives in, living together with Lord Sturts, they see how much he likes to casually kill people, as he's doing exactly that upon their arrival at his mansion. Perfectly legal, since there's a law allowing duels to the death to take place. Bumper then gets coerced into following Luna's sister around, which makes her reveal her plan in thought bubbles, which makes his presence there for this to be revealed pointless. She sets up duels for her husband in a plot to have him take their possessions legally, before ultimately having him murdered and taking his stuff after framing the person who ends up taking him down. Because of this, Bumper betrays Stunt, fueling his misogyny even further as he's taken a big-titted slut over his partner in crime. In the end, Everyone's evil plot is easily revealed and they all get caught, while Bumper tries to rape Luna as she's drugged. It's okay though, he's under an evil spell. Also, this has a rare colored panel which reveals to us that he's black as he's attempting to rape the noble white girl. Then both Luna's sister's husband's parents and Dominic's parents show up to try to talk sense into Sturts. This all goes sour as the Infernomancer arrives to kill everyone, attacking Dominic's mom and piercing her heart. Except it was all an illusion. They were never there, and that heart the Infernomancer ripped out, well, that was actually a trap. It really subverted my expectations. But of course, the slut sister has to save the bad guy because bad guys stick together for no reason. This doesn't end up meaning much as he's almost immediately stopped shortly after, as him attacking Sturts causes Lord Karnak to possess him due to an old wound he'd inflicted on him in the past. Oh, and the slut gets choked to death on a pearl necklace and left to die face down ass up. It's really subtle. The Infernomancer gets banished again, just like last time. Dominic then enters Sturt's mindscape, confronted with the sick reality that the man's life had become after being corrupted by Karnak for so long. Of course, Dominic has a bigger brain than Karnak, so his power inside the dreamscape is endless. This finally wakes up Sturts, so he's absolved of all the evils he has done in the past because things always are that simple. And now we get to use the slut as a punchline. With everything back to normal, Luna cries a lot again. That's as far as we're gonna go with this video. Dominic Deegan is a mess. The format doesn't work for the kind of story the writer wants to tell. The characters are two-dimensional cutouts. The romance is gross. A lot of it has aged exceptionally poorly, like treating misogyny as an endearing character trait, or the Ahegal death faces. And the art is generally terrible. Though, at least it's not as sad to look at these days as Mega Tokyo is. Mookie, the author, was probably really young when he started working on it, and his drive to update daily with pretty much no breaks in his schedule is very impressive. Putting him well above most webcomic authors just by virtue of showing up and having actual work ethic of sorts. It's one of those works where if you were online while this was published, and even if you haven't read it, and you go back to it now, you get where this comic came from, and how it got to be this way, and what big brain energy it was made out of. Would I recommend you read it now? No, you've got to be out of your goddamn mind. Anyway, this was Aboveup, and yeah, it's been a while since the last non-gaming video. Yes, I'm aware that this is not typical for the channel. Yes, I'm aware this is coming out of nowhere. A lot of you are very patient and waiting for more regular video uploads, and for that I am very grateful. Others have not been as patient, and that is why I'm taking time out of reviewing to talk about it. Let me make it perfectly clear since it was not made clear when those videos began. My channel has no set schedule. The videos are done when they're done and will be released when they're done. In case you haven't noticed, I have been more than a little busy lately. If you haven't noticed, wake up already! I worked 6 to 7 day work schedules, released 1 episode of Sonic High School per week, made 2 major videos per month, played through Devil May Cry 5, worked beyond my regular workload, have extra difficulties, one of those difficulties being reading this webcomic. In addition to that, people don't seem to realize how much work goes into these videos. Here's the process. I read the entire webcomic, which is several years worth of content. This would take almost the entire day if I read it all in one day, which I'm not, because I'm also writing a synopsis of the general chapters as I'm reading it, meaning I have to stop reading it in order to write. Once the chapter is completed, I spend time sorting my notes. Yes, I have to take breaks between chapters in order to get my thoughts down. It helps the analysis and judgment of the webcomic, and yes, I have to have my life outside of it. So when will the next review be done? When it's done. Asking me when the next one is done is not going to get it done faster. I have warned you all about this. I want to have fun while I'm doing this. As always, this video has been made because of the people supporting me on Patreon. If you wish to hold someone accountable for the topic of choice, several of the names here are to blame. If you wish to possibly be held accountable for a future video, or be mistaken for someone who is, you can do this by heading over to patreon.com/aboveup, and I will, see ya.